The Warsaw Ghetto was officially called Jüdischer Wohnbezirk in Warsaw, Jewish Residential District in Warsaw. Its creation took place in November 1940 under the rule of the German authorities in the newly established General Government Territory of occupied Poland. Today we're going to see the horrific conditions of the largest ghetto established by the Nazis during World War II. But first, let's understand what a ghetto actually is. The term ghetto originated from the name of the Jewish quarter in Venice. The Venetian authorities forced the city's Jews to live in that neighborhood, which was founded in 1516. In the 16th and 17th centuries, officials ranging from local authorities to the Austrian emperor ordered the creation of ghettos for Jews in Frankfurt, Rome, Prague, and other cities. During World War II, the SS and other German occupation authorities concentrated urban and sometimes regional Jewish populations into ghettos. Living conditions were extremely miserable. Ghettos were often closed-off districts that isolated Jews, separating Jewish communities from the non-Jewish population and from other Jewish communities. The Germans established an absurd 1,143 ghettos in the occupied Eastern territories. In short, there were three types of ghettos: closed ghettos, open ghettos, destruction. The German occupation authorities established the first ghetto in occupied Poland in Trybunalski in October 1939. The largest of all was the Warsaw Ghetto. The Warsaw Ghetto reached its peak population, housing about 460,000 Jews in an area of only 3.4 square kilometers. That's equivalent to 340 football fields, 1.3 square miles. This overcrowding resulted in an average of 9.2 people per room, with extremely poor living conditions and scarce food rations. The inhabitants of the Warsaw Ghetto faced terrible deprivation and suffering. Beyond the daily hardships, they lived under the constant threat of deportation to Nazi concentration camps and mass extermination centers. During the summer of 1942, at least 254,000 residents of the ghetto were sent to the Treblinka extermination camp as part of the Gross Action Warsaw, under the deceptive pretext of resettlement in the East. The history of the Warsaw Ghetto is also marked by the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, a heroic act of resistance that temporarily halted the deportations in May 1943. However, after the revolt was suppressed, the Germans demolished the ghetto and destroyed its facilities. The tragic fate of the Warsaw Ghetto's prisoners is devastating. It's estimated that at least 300,000 people lost their lives there, whether by execution, poison gas, or other forms of violence. In addition, around 92,000 victims died of hunger and diseases related to the poor living conditions, or were killed during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and in the final events of the ghetto's destruction. Before the outbreak of World War II, most of the Jewish community in Poland was concentrated in the commercial districts of Muranów, Powązki, and Stara Praga, while more than 90% of Catholics lived in areas further from the commercial center. Muranów stood out as the neighborhood with the highest Jewish presence, with over 88% of its inhabitants belonging to that community. Overall, Jews made up about 32.7% of the population on the left bank of Warsaw and 14.9% on the right bank, totaling 332,000 people according to the 1931 census. However, during the Great Depression, many Jews left the city. The situation of the Jews in Warsaw worsened due to anti-Semitic legislation, boycotts of Jewish businesses, and the rise of the nationalist Endeksia movement, promoted by the Polish government after the Piłsudski era. In 1938, the Jewish population of the Polish capital had declined, estimated at 270,000 people. The siege of Warsaw lasted until September 29, 1939. During this period, the city was the target of intense bombings by the Luftwaffe, with 17 attacks on just September 10th. 3 days later, 50 German planes attacked the city center. The result was devastating. About 30,000 people lost their lives, and 10% of the city was reduced to rubble. As the Wehrmacht forces advanced, the following also arrived in the city: Einsatzgruppen, responsible for numerous mass executions; Einsatzkommandos, systematically eliminating opponents of the Nazi regime; On November 7, 1939, the Reichsführer SS reorganized these units into the newly created Local Security Service, known as the SD. Josef Meisinger, known as the Butcher of Warsaw, who had led EG-4, was appointed Chief of Police of the newly formed Warsaw District. Establishment of the ghetto. At the end of the September campaign, the region around the capital saw a dramatic increase in the Jewish presence, with thousands of refugees seeking to escape hostilities in Nazi-occupied Poland. In less than a year, the number of refugees in Warsaw exceeded 90,000 people, indicating the chaos and persecution that plagued the region. On October 12, 1939, Adolf Hitler established the general government in the central part of occupied Poland, consolidating German control over the area. To manage the Jewish population in the capital, the Nazis appointed the Jewish Council, Judenrat, in Warsaw. This council was responsible for implementing German orders, which soon became increasingly oppressive. Starting in October, Jews were forced to work as laborers to repair the damage caused by air raids and perform other forced tasks. Economic measures restricted Jews' access to their own bank accounts and imposed severe restrictions, including the requirement to display the Jewish star on businesses and wear white armbands beginning in December. On January 26, 1940, German authorities banned communal prayers among Jews, citing the risk of epidemics. The issuance of food vouchers by German authorities deepened control over the Jewish population and intensified efforts to eliminate Jewish communities near Warsaw. The Jewish population in Warsaw grew to 359,827 people before the end of 1939. Starting in April 1940, under orders from District Governor Ludwig Fischer, construction of the ghetto wall began, surrounding the area of Warsaw primarily inhabited by Jews. The expulsion of ethnic Poles and the relocation of Jews from the suburbs to the city center accompanied the creation of the ghetto, which was officially announced in October 1940. The Warsaw Ghetto was sealed off from the outside world in November 1940, with a 3-meter-high wall topped with barbed wire and heavily policed. Conditions inside the ghetto deteriorated rapidly, resulting in disease outbreaks, starvation, and frequent executions. The ghetto was later divided into 2 parts, the small ghetto and the large ghetto, separated by a major street. The gate connecting them became a grim symbol of the Holocaust in German-occupied Poland. The Nazi authorities, with the deliberate aim of eradicating the ghetto through hunger and disease, imposed severe food and medical restrictions on the population. As a reference, let's consider that 1 slice of bread contains 80 calories. In 1941, the average daily food ration for Jews in Warsaw was limited to a meager 184 calories, less than 3 slices of bread, compared to 699 calories, 9 slices, allowed for non-Jewish Poles, and 2,613 calories, 32 slices, for Germans. In August, this ration dropped even further, reaching only 177 calories, barely 2 slices, per person. The meager provisions supplied by the German authorities generally consisted of poor-quality food, such as dry bread, flour, low-quality potatoes, groats, turnips, and a small monthly supplement of margarine, sugar, and meat. As a result, the black market economy flourished, with up to 80% of the ghetto's food being supplied by this underground market. In addition, the Joint, a Jewish humanitarian aid organization, established more than 250 community kitchens that served up to 100,000 meals a day. To survive, men, women, and children engaged in smuggling and illegal trade. Private workshops emerged in the ghetto for the secret production of goods to be sold outside the ghetto. Food smuggling was often carried out by children, who crossed the ghetto wall in every way possible, sometimes several times a day, bringing back goods that could weigh as much as they did. In an environment of widespread unemployment and extreme poverty, smuggling was often the only source of subsistence for the ghetto inhabitants, preventing many from starving to death. However, Some professional smugglers became wealthy from this illegal activity. During the first year and a half of the ghetto's existence, thousands of Polish Jews and even some Roma from smaller towns and rural areas were transferred there. However, many died from typhus and starvation, resulting in the ghetto's population remaining nearly unchanged. In the face of devastating hunger and scarce medical supplies, a group of Jewish doctors imprisoned in the ghetto chose to take the opportunity to study the physiological and psychological effects of hunger. This study, known as the Warsaw Ghetto Hunger Study, remains one of the most comprehensive investigations into the effects of undernutrition to this day. Despite the extremely difficult and oppressive conditions, life in the Warsaw Ghetto was not entirely devoid of educational and cultural activities, some conducted legally and others carried out by underground organizations within the ghetto. Within the ghetto, hospitals, public canteens, orphanages, refugee centers, and recreational facilities were established. Additionally, an educational system was created, although some schools operated illegally and were disguised as social canteens. There were also secret libraries, classes for children, and even a symphony orchestra. Rabbi Alexander Friedman, Secretary General of Agudath Israel of Poland, played a significant role in promoting religious education within the Warsaw Ghetto. He organized an underground network of religious schools, including a Yesodei HaTorah school for boys, a Bais Yaakov school for girls, and other institutions for advanced Jewish studies. These schools, disguised as kindergartens, medical centers, and social canteens, served as a refuge for thousands of children and adolescents, as well as hundreds of teachers. In 1941, when the German authorities gave official permission to the local Judenrat to open schools, these institutions came out of hiding and began to receive financial support from the official Jewish community. Additionally, some forms of cultural entertainment were still possible within the ghetto. The former Femina Cinema was converted into a theater, and the Jewish Symphony Orchestra performed in various venues, including the Femina. Despite the harsh living conditions, Israel Gutman estimates that around 20,000 prisoners, out of over 400,000 in the ghetto, managed to maintain some level of comfort due to wealth they had before the war or accumulated during it, mainly through smuggling. These families and individuals frequented restaurants, clubs, and cafes within the ghetto, highlighting the deep economic inequalities that existed within the ghetto walls. Tilar Mazeo estimates this group at around 10,000 people, including wealthy industrialists, many Judenrat council leaders, Jewish police officers, profiteering smugglers, nightclub owners, and sophisticated prostitutes. They spent their time in more than 60 cafes and nightclubs, often dancing among the corpses, a stark contrast to the living conditions of the majority of the ghetto inhabitants. About 100,000 ghetto prisoners had already lost their lives to hunger and malnutrition-related diseases before mass deportations began in the summer of 1942. That year, during the infamous Wannsee Conference near Berlin, the horrific Final Solution was put into practice. This secret plan aimed at the mass extermination of the Jewish population in the general government, a part of Nazi-occupied Poland. The techniques used to deceive the victims were refined based on experience gained at the Chełmno, Kulmhof, extermination camp. The Jews living in the ghettos were systematically rounded up, street by street, under the pretense of resettlement, and marched to the departure point known as the Umschlagplatz. From there, they were sent on Holocaust trains to the Treblinka extermination camp, located in a forest 80 kilometers northeast of Warsaw. This operation was led by Hermann Höfle, the German Commissioner of Resettlement. Adam Cherniakov, leader of the Judenrat Council, committed suicide upon learning of this plan and was replaced by Marek Lichtenbaum, who was tasked with coordinating the operations with the help of the Jewish ghetto police. No one among the population was informed of the horrific reality. Extermination at Treblinka, too, was carried out using poisonous gas as part of the so-called Operation Reinhard, which also included the extermination camps of Belzec, Majdanek, and Sobibor. From July to September 1942, approximately 254,000 to 300,000 Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto were sent to Treblinka and murdered there. The survival rate in relation to the victims was minuscule, only about 2%. Over the course of 8 weeks, deportations occurred daily, with trains carrying thousands of people in dreadful conditions. The first trains arrived at the camp in the morning after long overnight waits in parking yards, followed by trains that arrived in the mid-afternoon. All newcomers were immediately directed to the undressing area and then to the gas chambers, where they were suffocated by carbon monoxide gas. In September 1942, new gas chambers were built, increasing the efficiency of the massacre. The Jewish Combat Organization, JOB, was formed in October 1942, with Mordechai Anielewicz leading the efforts to oppose the deportations. During this period, Treblinka also received transports of foreign Jews, including from the German Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, and from areas occupied by Bulgaria in agreement with the Nazis. By the end of 1942, it became clear to many that the deportations led to death. Underground resistance in the ghetto intensified its efforts after the revelation of the deportation's true outcome, and Jan Karski, a Polish resistance officer, informed Western governments about the situation in the ghetto and the extermination camps. Many of the remaining Jews chose to resist deportation, smuggling weapons and supplies. The fight for survival and resistance against the Nazi horror continued. In 1943, one of the largest uprisings of World War II would take place. But that's a topic for another video. If you'd like to see a detailed video about the Warsaw Ghetto uprising here on the channel, leave a comment below. If you believe this video has taught you something or added value in any way, and you want to support our work here on YouTube, may God bless you all and see you soon.